All right, so I've been using the Godox X3 for the last little over a year now for all my real estate and architecture shoots in tandem with my AD400 Pro. And I'm finally ready to give you guys my thoughts on this. And honestly, I think this could be the best compact flash trigger for any Godox system out there. So let's get into it. All right, so I have used a lot of triggers over the years. A lot of guys are probably familiar with their like XproN trigger, the big guy that used to come with the AD400. You had to buy it, I guess, with it. Godox Odin 2, I've used a ton of just like cheap ones like Velo triggers and some Pocket Wizards over the years. And by far and away, once you get this thing set up, it is probably the easiest trigger I have ever used, and it performs super consistently. And one of the biggest things that I love about it is its build quality. The audible clicks and the tactile clicks that you get from the dial on this guy, the buttons, and how the old XPro, the button used to wear out that you turned it on and off with. Even if you were, not turning it on and off constantly during the shoot, it got loose. And this is fantastic. I absolutely love the size. And I really, really love that it's a USB-C chargeable, and the battery in it is fabulous. I have never had battery anxiety with this guy. One thing to note about it is I do think it is compatible with almost every Godox flash out there. It may even be compatible with their like bicolor lighting as well. I've noticed in a firmware update that this thing got that there is like a little colored dial on it at the very bottom that you may be able to set up with that. I'm not entirely sure what that is. But for my use and all the different Godox flashes that I've seen, this thing is bar none and is compatible with all of them. As I said in the intro, one of my favorite things about this is the internal battery. With a lot of old triggers and other ones, you have to use like AA batteries that you got to keep charged. You got to keep a bunch of them, and they're just heavy, and you either got to buy a case or something to carry them in, and they were always, flying around in my bag, and I just didn't like it. And they also, they wouldn't last all day, even if I had the really expensive ones. I don't know what kind of software this thing is running, but it seems to manage its power very, very well. And having that USB-C charger just makes things so much easier. I can plug it into my car. I could plug it into a power pack if I needed to. It just makes it really flexible and really easy to use. This flash is also extremely easy to use once it gets set up. One of the best tips that I can give is to run a channel scan with it. For a long time, I have been using it just on like the default. I keep looking at my flash because I keep remembering that I used to have it on just like whatever default channel I picked or set up as, because it was so manual, the old triggers were. But this one actually can scan the channels. And when it scans them, it will takes probably about 15, 20 seconds, but then it will return and give you a list of the best channels in a priority of which one is the clearest for your current situation. So if you ever run into some issues where it's not triggered and there might be some interference, just run a quick channel scan and it'll solve it. It's really easy to set up on the Godox AD400 Pro as well. And on the note of durability now, this thing is rock solid. I mean, it is made of plastic, but it's a really, really heavy duty plastic. I have dropped it a couple times, not straight onto the screen, but it feels because of its size and the lovely case that comes with it, it just feels like it's gonna last a lot longer. All of the buttons and the dials and everything feels really solid. I really like the locking mechanism on this. I've had some where they're like twist, or they just have kind of a funky, cheap feeling locking system, and they can kind of like slide back on the hot shoe. This doesn't do that. And I'm really satisfied with how strong the spring is, and just everything about the build quality of this just feels really nice. All right, so let's talk about a couple of the downsides I've experienced on it. The first one is that when you get it, or if you reset it, it comes in Chinese, or what I believe is Chinese. And it can be a little confusing to get through it. The first thing that you do, power it on, and then once it powers up, you will swipe down from the top of it, and then you'll find the little settings button at the bottom right. It's like a gear icon. And then from there, you'll scroll all the way down, and there'll be a little globe, and it won't say language, it'll be in Chinese, but if you touch that globe, you'll come up with either Chinese or English. Just tap English and then you can swipe out of it and it'll be all set up correctly. And you'll be able to see all the menus and navigate really easy. It's only a minor annoyance and I kind of get it knowing where it comes from, but it is kind of a pain. And the only other thing I've really experienced with this is that it did have some misfires. And again, I think as I mentioned earlier, it was because I was working with it just kind of on channel 2, whatever default that I had been using for years. And all I had to do, run that channel scan, it picked a good channel for me. Turns out it was like 23 to 25 was really good. And since then I have not had a single misfire with it at all, and it's kind of solved it. So I'm pretty sure that was just a user error instead of it actually being a problem of the hardware. So that kind of brings us to, would I purchase this again? And the answer is absolutely. I'd highly recommend this to anybody who uses kind of Godox flashes. They are the standard now for just about everything. I mean, they're kind of becoming that, like, not budget level, but that kind of like middle tier, good quality name that you can kind of rely on. They're very reliable. And I think with this over their other trigger has really, really made this, or shown me like the direction that they're going. And even my AD400 Pro, super reliable. So I would highly recommend this to anybody who's thinking about getting it or needing a trigger over that, that XPro that they used to have, the kind of big hockey puck thing that you would get with those flashes. And to answer a question I've kind of seen online in a couple forums is that, does this have a legacy hot shoe mode? And the answer is yes, it does. I don't know if that was introduced with a firmware update. It has had a couple, and this is running the latest firmware. But that legacy hot shoe mode is basically just a way for it to use older hot shoes that may not have TTL capabilities. And it just is kind of a, what we call dumb trigger, where it just fires when it detects a signal. And it does have that on here. I have heard that some people have a little bit of trouble with it on some of those older hot shoes because the build tolerances were a little loose. So you might kind of have to wiggle it around to get it to work, but it does work with a legacy hot shoe on some cameras, which is really cool if you're running a really old camera, possibly even like a film camera maybe, to trigger this with a modern flash. And to wrap it up, I think this is a no-brainer of a flash trigger. If you use Godox flashes, if you are in a studio setup, architecture portraits out in the field using it, they're becoming such a synonymous name, as we talked about, that I think this is really just a no-brainer. It is so flexible. It is so easy to use once you get through that like language barrier on the menu setup. And honestly, I don't think I've tapped into like even a quarter of the power of this thing. It has a whole alphabet of channels that you can use, and then different IDs, and it can get as complicated or as simple as you want it. So if you are somebody who is a Godox user that is just struggling with some of the more basic triggers that you had, or maybe yours is wearing out and you're looking for something, I would highly recommend using this. It lasts all day for my architecture and real estate shoots, multiple shoots, even multiple days. It charges really quickly, and especially with that USB-C port, it's just, there's no real reason not to upgrade to it if you're looking. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. If you guys have any questions about this trigger, please let me know in the comments down below. Let me know your guys' experiences if you use this, or maybe what you're looking for out of a flash trigger. I always like to have my comments section be a open dialogue and a way for people to, answer questions if they've got it, or maybe even find some support if they are running into trouble. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. We'll see you guys on the next one.